What's going on here? Why is he tearing his car apart? What's up with the radio? Why is he eating pistachios? When people offer the advice, show, don't tell, this is what they mean. This scene is a perfect example of why that method of storytelling is so engaging, and why, if you haven't already, you really should watch Better Call Saul. Without spoiling any of the context surrounding this moment, let me briefly summarize what happens. Mike discovers a tree branch holding down his car horn and then drives frantically for a bit before stopping and looking around the undercarriage of his car. When that proves fruitless, Mike takes his car to a junkyard and proceeds to tear it apart, looking in every nook and crevice to no avail. On the brink of giving up, Mike notices gas tank caps for sale, grabs a screwdriver to pry open his own, and finds a something. At home, he retrieves the something from his gas tank cap, examines it, and writes down its serial number. Then goes and gets an identical device for himself, and we now find out, if we haven't already guessed, that said doodad is in fact a tracker. Mike takes the tracker from his car and uses its battery to power his radio, quickly draining the little AA. He then returns the tracker to his car, pulls a chair up by his window with some pistachios in hand, and waits. And that entire time, he says hardly a word. The last 7+ minutes of this episode are completely devoid of dialogue. Nothing is explained to us. We are simply presented with the events and trusted to figure out what is happening. Why is this quote-unquote good storytelling? Why should more shows strive to imitate this style? Why did this scene suck me in to the point that I forgot about everything else in the world for those magical minutes? Because it made me pay attention. It made me think. It made me be intentional about the content I was consuming. Better Call Saul is rife with characters creating and executing schemes of all kinds, which usually play out over the course of a season or even longer. This scene is a microcosm of that trope. It goes from discovery to research to planning to execution in such a short time frame that the viewers, if they've been paying attention, can't help but remember every step Mike takes. There's no need to revisit prior episodes to discover how he set up a part of his plan or to figure out his motivation. We see all of that laid out before us, consumable in a single glance. It makes the audience appreciate the grander schemes shown within the story by compacting this plot down to a bite-sized morsel. And of course, there is the cleverness of it all. Even if you knew nothing about Mike's character and watched this scene in a vacuum, you would immediately understand that this is a resourceful and ingenious son of a gun. Cunning and creativity are some of the most enjoyable traits to see displayed on screen, especially when, as is the case here, the story doesn't feel the need to tell you that the character is smart, shrewd, and quick-witted. It simply lets you infer that as you watch them act. But Better Call Saul wasn't just interested in showing you that Mike is intelligent and savvy. It wanted you to feel that way too. That is yet another reason why show don't tell is so important. It treats the audience like they have an actual brain which is engaged with the show, and less like they have their eyes on their Twitter feed and are only half paying attention. In other words, these smartly told stories make an effort to make you feel smart. When a scene like this one is presented as a puzzle to put together, you race to figure out what is going on, why the character is doing what he's doing, and when you crack that code, you feel like a certifiable genius. That is, unless your wife figures it out first and blurts out the answer you've been searching for just before you get there. Thanks, honey. You don't have to be super smart to watch and enjoy Better Call Saul, I'm proof positive of that, but you do have to think about it. If a story makes you expend mental energy on it, you are naturally going to be more invested in it. Provided, of course, that said mental energy is spent unearthing the little details that fully flesh out a complex narrative and not wondering why everyone in this show is an idiot. The writers wanted their audience to be an active one, truly engaged by the storytelling. That's why they could leave out the filler dialogue and exposition so common nowadays. If the viewer really cares, he can and will fill in the gaps. You may have noticed that there are some gaps in my summary of the events. I certainly hope you did. First, I said that Mike tears his car apart to find the tracker, and then at home retrieves the tracker from the cap in his gas tank. How did the second part happen if his car was scrapped at a junkyard? Well, obviously, he has 2 cars. We do see him take a cab home. Okay, so why does he have 2 cars? Again, I don't want to spoil the context around this scene, but the car he tears apart was being used during some less than legal activities. So we can assume that Mike didn't want his normal car present when the shit hit the fan. We can take a guess that the car he tore to shreds was not in fact registered to him. We never see him buy this car, we have no idea where it came from. But the fact that he had it once again speaks to his status as a shrewd and careful operator. This is such a tiny detail, but it shows just how much care was put into building this character and crafting this narrative. Second, I said that Mike puts the tracker back on his car. Well, I lied. He puts a tracker back in the gas cap, but it's the one he purchased, the one he can now track. Why? Well, because he rightfully assumes that whoever is tracking him will notice, at some point anyway, that their tracker has gone dead thanks to him using it to power his radio and come to replace it. Since they don't want to leave evidence behind, they will naturally take the dead tracker with them. Except it's not their dead tracker, it's Mike's live one. And so the prey becomes the hunter. And the final detail that sold this scene to me is this: the pistachios. No, seriously. Why is he eating pistachios? Why not peanuts, almonds, or cashews? Well, pistachios are one of the only nuts most commonly sold in their shell, meaning Mike has to discard the inedible husk, meaning we get a visual representation of how much time has passed without ever seeing a clock. Could they have just shown his watch? Of course, but I ask you, are not pistachio shells a far more creative and ingenious way for the filmmakers to mark the passing of the hours? But more important than the pistachios really is the fact that we are allowed the time to sit there with Mike. This is not dead air, it is an opportunity for the audience. While he watches and waits, we are given a chance to think, to ponder the events we have just seen, to figure out what happened and what will happen next. The best shows don't just want you to puzzle over their past, they want you to speculate about their future. If you are truly invested in a story, you will not only be going back over it to uncover little bits of character or world building that you may have missed, you will also be using that knowledge to predict what happens next. Because you care. By crafting a story with an enormous amount of love and attention to detail, by writing characters who are unique and well fleshed out, and by trusting you to follow the narrative without your hand being held, the creators of stories like Better Call Saul pull you into their world and make what happens there matter to you. And that's what we all want, right?